Welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 31. On tonight's show, just flip, no, not that one, that one. Yes, good start. On tonight's show, I'm going to be looking at Castle Douglas High School Young Enterprise Group and a shoot I did with them about 5 years ago. Chatting about the decisions we made, how we created the photo, some of the editing processes. I'm going to be offering up a challenge for next week, where I want you to take your own photo to submit for a specific challenge. We're going to try something new here on Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. So yeah, more about that to come. I'm also going to be looking at, on the critique feedback section, Eamon sent in this photos wanting to know if there's other things he could have done in the editing process, and then VG sent in her photo wondering about how she could actually blur the background a little bit more so that the attention stays on the shoot that's coming up out of the ground. So that's kind of what we're going to be dealing with tonight. Also, I'm here live, Facebook. Leave comments, please do. Or actually, for that matter, if you're watching a recorded version on YouTube, leave comments too. That's always good. I am supposed to be notified of comments. Occasionally, I suddenly find that I wasn't, but I think I've got that fixed now. But yeah, feel free to leave comments there. But if this is your first time here, then let me know where you're from. Or, well, let me know where you're from anyway, just in case there's anybody else here having a first time. You can take a look in the comments and you can see where other people are tuning in from. And if you find any of this useful and you would like to support these podcasts, then there is buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres where you can make a contribution. It's not compulsory, but it is always welcome. Right, okay, that pretty much gets us off to the start. So what I wanted to talk about was so I'll actually go back and I will open that photo again. I just closed it. Actually, I'll tell you what, let's just do a quick check. Yes, here we go. Facebook comments. I do actually have a couple here. Pat's got here just in time, she says. I'm glad you could make it along, Pat. Stacey, good afternoon, Kim. Hi, Stacey. Stacey's in Pennsylvania. Maggie says hello everyone. That's my wife who's in the kitchen next door. Oh dear, this is where I'm going to embarrass myself slightly. Katazina. If you can let me know whether it's Katazina or something else, I'd appreciate that. Anyway, a good evening to you too. And Robert from Texas says howdy. So welcome, Robert, too. Okay, that's great. I'll periodically through the evening I will pop into the comments and just check. So if you have any questions or you comments or please leave them in there. I will get to them. Keep saying hi, chat amongst yourselves, and yeah, like I said, I'll pop into them. So I'll just minimize that for the moment and flip back over to here. So yes, what I wanted to talk about this evening was this shoot I did for Castle Douglas High School, which is the high school in my town here in Castle Douglas. And a few years ago I was recruited in to help out, and basically what happens is each year all the local high schools take part in a young enterprise group setup, whereby what they have to do is they have to create some kind of product, design it, make it, and then market it and put it out there to sell and raise money for charity. And then the various local schools all compete, and there's regional heats and then there's a national Scottish heat as well, or Scottish competition. And in this particular case, what had happened was Castle Douglas High School had started creating these cake stands. So you can see here, using sort of old vintage plates. And what happened was sort of various connections. The sort of team mentor was Andrea from Dumfries and Galloway Life magazine, and she asked if I'd be happy to sort of come on board and do a wee photo shoot for them. So I thought, well, yeah, that was kind of fun. A lot of the people here in this photo, I think, were in the same year or thereabouts as my daughter when she was still at the school there. So I think this is roughly about sort of coming up for about 5 years ago, thereabouts. And so I thought, well, okay, that'd be kind of fun, go in and sort of take a photo. So what I did was I met up, first of all, with a small group of the pupils who, now, so just to let you know, they're all kind of about 17, 18, the final year of high school. So what, if you're in America, what's that, 12th grade, something like that, I think, the equivalent, or 6th form in the UK. So I met up with a small handful of them, and we started to discuss what kind of photo shoot we would do. Now, they had in mind the idea to go along with the vintage plates that they could do a kind of like the Mad Hatter's tea party. So I said, well, okay, if you're going to do that, you need to have a think about outfits, makeup, place, where you're going to do it. If you're going to sort of base your costumes on the Alice in Wonderland stories or films, which versions are you going to do? Are you going to sort of base it on like the original drawings from the books? Are you going to base it on the sort of the classic Disney cartoon? Are you going to base it on the sort of Johnny Depp more recent version? And so we talked a little bit about that. We talked about where we might be able to do it. And to be honest, I wasn't really totally sure what to expect. Whilst I'm a dad, I had teenagers, growing up with teenagers, and generally speaking, any parent of teenagers knows you don't get a huge amount of respect. Quite often a lot of confrontations at various points. Love my kids to bits, and we get on so much better now they're out their teens. I wasn't sure quite what it was going to be like, but amazingly they were all absolutely brilliant, and they listened carefully, and they went away and they really paid attention to the detail. They got in touch with the local theatre, the Fullerton Theatre, who lent them costumes. They watched YouTube videos on how to do the makeup. I think somebody had a connection, it might have been a parent who worked at a place called Cali Palace, which is this grand wedding venue about 15 miles from here. Got in touch with Cali Palace. Cali Palace said, yes, more than happy for you to use the place for the shoot. And, it turned out then that in order to get this photo, I actually had a whole team at my disposal. Costume people, makeup artists, people prepared to sort out the props. And then Gemma, who was in charge, Gemma Blackburn, who was the teacher in charge of it all, she was fantastic as well. And it ended up being quite an amazing shoot. Now, I do actually have a wee behind the scenes video. Now, I didn't make this one. They did. One of the things I said to them was, if we're going to go through this shoot, what might be useful is if you video it as well. So they had a couple of people using their phones, and I think somebody might have had a camera as well, and then they edited it all together, created, I think it was just over 2 minutes. So what I'll do then is I'll just play you that and then talk you through it as it goes. Okay, turn the music down a little bit. It's just a kind of generic piece they grabbed, I think, rights free piece of music. So you can see here they are trying out the makeup when they're at school. Looks like they're in an IT suite or somewhere, so hopefully not getting the makeup over the computers or the hairspray for that matter. So I'm not sure whether this was trialling out or whether this was actually before we went down to do the actual shoot itself. Here we are then at Cali Palace, costumes being adorned, makeup on. Me now giving the speech. That's a smaller bald patch and less grey in the hair. That's only 5 years ago. I really noticed the difference. You can see a wonderful venue, really plush, these wonderful chairs. And so it's then a case of sort of putting all the lights in place, everybody sort of moving around, setting stuff up. Now you might be able to see I've got the laptop tethered to the camera. This meant that when I took the photos, everybody could see what was going on. So I did some test photos, tested the lights, and then once we were happy with that, they started stacking up the plates with the food, and I got to work really. So a couple of different ways I did it. First of all, I sort of shot with a standard lens, and then after that I decided, once I kind of got one in the bag there, I put on the wide angle lens and then started getting in close. I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. And then I did a sort of several individual shots so they could use them as publicity. And here you can see a couple of the photos, and I'll talk through these again in a moment. And these were some of the individual character shots. So, okay. So what we had then is essentially what I'll do now is I'll just flip over to, just to show you the difference. When I was talking a little bit about the idea of using a kind of standard lens and then using a wide angle lens, this was using a sort of a slightly more standard, it's my 24 to 70 millimeter lens. I can't remember exactly what the setup with that was, but it was created as a square crop, and it's sort of, it has that sort of, apart from the editing, it sort of looks like you would expect to see it. But then what I did, once we kind of got this one in the bag, I stuck on the wide angle lens, went really wide, moved in close, and shot this, which I prefer. And the reason for using the wide angle, it distorts everything, and because we were going for this sort of Alice in Wonderland theme, I thought that sort of slightly more distorted feel would work really well. Another angle I tried on it was where I actually turned it portrait as well. I always quite like that one. It sort of makes you feel slightly dizzy. I think it's like vertigo inducing, a warped kind of sense as you're sort of standing, like I might have been on tiptoe or on a stool or something to get that shot. One of the main things we had to remember when we were doing this shoot, though, was to actually have the cake stands at the front of the photo. They'd done so amazingly with the costumes that it was very tempting to sort of just have all the costumes at the front and make the shoot about them. But, you know, part of the discussion we had was the cake stands were what they were selling. So the cake stands actually had to be first and foremost, and they had to kind of be in the supporting role of the cake stands and not the other way around. And it is one of those things when you're doing this kind of photography, it's so easy to get carried away with the set and the design and everything else that you actually forget the point of the thing that you're actually trying to promote. So so we did that anyway. They went down really well. They used the photos for publicity. And then Andrea asked me, did I have a version that I could, she wanted to feature strongly on in DG Life magazine. Though she didn't want the distorted one. It was this version she wanted, but she thought it was kind of over edited for what she wanted. Did I have another version? Now I did, because basically I'd sort of I'd layered up the different sort of levels of editing. I'll maybe show you that in a minute, I think. And that was, if you like, the stage before. So it's a very different feel, and maybe you prefer that one, maybe you prefer this one. They've both got a different feel, and I will talk about that then. Yeah, well, I'll show you some tricks in the editing in a minute on how that works. But Andrea thought this was perfect, and it actually ended up then on the cover of Dumfries and Galloway Life magazine, on the January issue, which actually the January issue came out sort of just into the second week of December. So it's sort of, you know, nice and bright and colourful. Wonderful for the high school students to, see that all their time and effort and energy put into something which, then ends up on the cover of the magazine as well. So huge amount of fun, and it was great. It was just absolutely great working with the entire team. They threw themselves into it with such professionalism and fun. They went in and they completely wiped the floor at the regional level. And now this is terrible. I can't fully remember if they won or came very highly commended up on the national level as well. Funny feeling they won the national level as well. But yeah, it was a really good year for the Castle Douglas High School Enterprise Group. So what I will do, actually, I'll show you. If I'm going to open this in Photoshop. Now, I've done a fair amount of editing to get it to this stage. It's a nice kind of polished photo. But the reason I took it to that next level was, again, it was sort of playing around with particular ideas. That idea of illustration, the Lewis Carroll books, Victorian Edwardian kind of feel to it. You've got that sort of pastime. So what I decided to do was, several layers out, really. I wanted to sort of make it look more like an illustration. And I will show you briefly. There's a couple of different stages I did with this. So I'll just duplicate the layer there. And one of the things I did was, in Photoshop, you have, I go to the filter gallery. And the filter gallery allows you to do all sorts of different things. You can sort of zoom this out. So I can have like cutout, dry brush, neon glow, rough pastels. So you can make things look like a charcoal sketch. There's basically a whole bunch of filters that you can add on. Distortions, you can make it look like there's a kind of ocean ripple across the front of it. Anyway, what I did was I used one called coloured pencil, basically. So we created that effect. But then what I did was essentially no, not that. Okay, I've got the gradient here. I then, not fully, let's go to hue saturation. Yeah, I then sort of desaturated that more kind of into a drawing level. Now I will just attach that to that layer. Now with this layer, what I did then was I will just mask this, and just, you can see around the edge, so that as it goes out towards the edge, it sort of fades out towards the edge. I mean, what I also did was, let's create a new fill layer here, not with black, completely opposite, but with white. So it's all fading out towards the edges. And then the next thing I did, back to hue saturation and colorize. I need to unattach that. Yeah, there we go. So I colorize that and turn it to something, take that to about sort of 44, something like that. Give it a sepia look, but not completely. I just drag that down to something like about, where are we at, 50%, 59%, something like that, and maybe just lighten the whole thing very slightly. And there you can see then that what we've got is, because it sort of fades out, but it fades out into the drawing. In fact, actually, I might just have overdone. Let's take that layer down a bit. Yeah, something like that. So it has that feeling, and I will just, actually, let's just take that in again, and then oh, wrong way. What am I doing here? doing it in reverse. That's what I wanted to do. Yeah, so do that, and then yeah, just sort of faintly bring that in. So what you can see is it looks like as you move out towards the edges, it sort of fades out from photo to drawing. And then that way, the sepia kind of tint gives it that slightly more aged feeling. That's kind of Edwardian, Victorian feel to it. The fact that it fades out at the edges, again, a bit like an old photo, but also the fact that it goes to a drawing style rather than just fading out at the edges as a photo, kind of makes it feel a little bit more like an illustration. And then because the colours are slightly faded, then you become very aware of the sort of browns, the golds, brown and golds, the reds and the blues, and it looks like you've got a sort of slightly limited colour palette, almost like it's been painted in onto a drawing. So that was the effect that I used, and then I applied that effect to each of the other photos. But basically, let's hold on a sec. I just meant to group those into there so that you can see that then that it went from that to that. And as you saw, it was that version that ended up on the front of the Dumfries and Galloway Life magazine. So it's just, it was a really fun shoot. The pupils were absolutely fantastic. Students were fantastic. The response to it was brilliant, but it was a fun thing to edit as well. As well as take the photo, getting back and deciding how I was going to edit the photo, what kind of feel I was going to do, and then once you come up with an idea how you actually do it, there's an awful lot of many hours went into this. But I learnt a lot in the process as well. What I've just shown you taking 2 minutes probably took me the best part of about 2 days to actually work out how to do. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. So I'll flip back now to the comments. See if we got any more. All right, VG's come in. VG from India. Hi everyone. Hi VG. Glad you could make it. Anne also from Dallas. Hi Anne. Marsha's replying to Maggie saying hello. Ray has come in saying that looked like a really good day, Kim. I'm glad you could make it long, Ray. Yes it was. It was a lot of fun. VG says wide-angled lens 1 is perfect for this theme. Was actually wondering the people behind look like cut-out figures. Yeah, it is part of that thing that if I just very briefly go back to one of the things that the wide-angle lens does is, as well as distort it, it kind of flattens it a little bit as well. Because it's distorted, everybody sort of becomes, does look a little bit more two-dimensional. But that's also the illustration side of it that I was trying to create, was so that it becomes a bit more two-dimensional. Stacey, love this theme. Pat, they are a striking-looking bunch. Wonder if any of them went on to do something in the arts. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. Very few of them have actually kept in touch. Stacey says my next lens will be a wide angle. Yes, I would recommend it. I think a wide angle lens is a lot of fun. So you really try and go as wide as you can. The lens that I've got is a 10 to 22 millimeters, and a 10 millimeter is really pretty wide. It's not quite fisheye, but when you've got it extended, everything distorts out at the ends. Now it allows you to, you can be in a small room and fit in a lot more space, although at that point quite often you're in the editing process trying to get rid of the distortions because you don't want it looking so bad. But if you're going for a stylized look, you can really get quite otherworldly and weird with the wide angle lens. I mean, on your phones here, these things tend to have quite a wide angle lens so they can fit a lot into it, which is why everybody's selfie always looks a little bit odd. Their face is slightly distorted. And the lens that I've got on this webcam here, this is also much wider than I thought it was. I don't know quite what I was expecting when I bought it. I think it didn't say how wide angle it was. But what you notice is as I come in, the face becomes very distorted. It now becomes very, very long. You can't really see my ears because it's sort of pushing things out. If I go over to the side, you know, the head sort of it distorts much more. You know, look how big my hand comes. You know, so everything sort of becomes exaggerated with a wide angle lens. It does allow you to put more into the space, but at the same time you play with the distortions as well. Okay, Stacey all says, by the way, my dad was with me. I'm at the doctor's office, so he was involved. He knows where Dumfries is because during World War II he was located at birth. Oh well, hi Stacey's dad. Hope you're getting on fine. And Vijay says lovely, and Kadazina says just beautiful. Thank you. And you do have to let me know whether I'm pronouncing your name right. Okay. So where are we at? Okay, I will minimize that. Now, one of the other things I did was, actually, there's a really good point here. I put up in the group, because there is the group Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. If you're not already a member, please join it. Just literally type in Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. You'll find into Facebook. There's a group there. Click join, and somebody will let you in, probably me. Now, I did put a little post in there a couple of days ago. I suddenly realised, hey, it's Halloween. Let's stick it. Anybody want to stick some Halloween photos in? And I got 2 responses. Now, on the one hand, it might just be nobody was really interested. On the other, I kind of started to suspect part of the problem is, of course, Facebook doesn't show all the posts to everybody. And then I caught somebody else talking about the fact that Facebook has changed their things so that with groups, even though you've joined them, they will quite often only show you the most popular posts. But they only show you the popular posts once people have started liking and commenting on them. But if nobody knows they're there, nobody likes or comments on them, so the posts don't become popular, so they don't bother showing it to anybody. So there is a kind of real communication problem here on Facebook. So what I will do, I think, let me just see if I can find... I will go to that group and I will change that to interact as Kim Ayres. And I will just flip over here because what I want to show you is if you go to the Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres group, over on the right, top right corner, and I think this is true whether you're looking at this on a tablet or a phone, there's 3 little dots. Click on the 3 little dots and there's a menu drops down, says manage and the top one is manage notifications. And if you click on that, you'll get notification settings and it says all posts, highlights, friends only posts or off. Now, it defaults to highlights. And this is what I said. The problem is that it's only really going to show you posts that are kind of already got likes or comments on. So if you want to make sure you click all posts on the notification settings, then that way, at least when I shove something into Facebook, you should at least be notified, because I want to try and do a little bit more with the group. And as I said, in a minute, I'm going to talk about setting a challenge, things like that. So please do go ahead, just doubly check your notification settings and change it to all posts so that you can, if you're enjoying these podcasts, this group, Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, is there precisely as the place where you can post your images, where you can ask for help, where you can stick bits and pieces on, and where I give all the notifications for the stuff that's coming up next week. So if you don't mind doing that, that would be great. Another thing, just one other thing, is actually also on the video itself. If you're looking at this video, I think if you're looking on the desktop, you might have to sort of go up into the expand it out as kind of full video. But again, there's a little bell symbol in the top right corner. Click on that, and then that way you get notified each time I go live. So yeah. Anyway, so that's a little distraction there, or it's not a distraction, a tangent, but an important one for notifications. So, okay, so let's just actually do a little quick thing about the Halloween. So basically what happened with the Halloween was I suddenly thought, well, okay, this is kind of fun. And I shoved up on my personal page, I took a photo, found an old photo I'd taken of a spider's web, which was covered in dewdrops. I turned it into black and white and put it up, and I got quite a few likes. I got about 60 odd likes or something on my personal page, which was fine, you know. And then I suddenly thought, oh, well, actually, we could do that for. Why don't we just kind of do that as a Halloween thing? So what I then did was I gave it an orange thing, give it that black and orange Halloween colours. Shoved it into the group and said, if you've got any interesting Halloween pictures, put them in and I'll show them on the next podcast. So like I say, basically I got two. I got Tammy sent this one and said, does anyone shoot interiors of windows at night? Lol. This is on Halloween night in downtown Peterborough, New Hampshire. So that was kind of fun. She went out and was checking all the shop windows for the Halloween displays. And then we also had Stacey, in fact, sent me 4. She said, spiders and skulls. I think I asked her whether it was her own or whether she'd sort of been going around the gardens, because she'd also posted this one and said the person who started the displays usually starts with either the skull creature, death, or a witch. One side of the house and on the driveway is a Stargate and giant spiders. Last year he added scenes from a movie, A Nightmare Before Christmas. The man works for IBM and they have a friend who lives there and works as a special effects man. So, so they really go to town with our Halloween displays in their garden, which is a lot of fun. She also sent this one. I live around the corner from this one where they take Halloween to another level. This is one of their displays. And finally, this is another house which normally has the most, but because of the lockdown, he did not put up the entire display. What a load of fun. Round here, I mean, there are places which go to town at Christmas, and you'll have reindeer and sledges in flashing lights on top of roofs. Not vast amounts, but there's a few people who do that. There was a house down the way one year, for the first few years we were here, that every Christmas would, the whole garden was just covered in all these different lit up things. They've not done it for the last few years, but Halloween is one of those which there might be window displays, but I don't know, not tend to see quite so many people going to town with it in the garden. So these are really quite fun. So anyway, thank you Tammy and thank you Stacey for sending those through. And this kind of set me off partly with this, got me thinking about the idea of doing a wee challenge. So that's what I thought. Actually, let's just double check on the comments just in case anybody happens to have made any Halloween comments. No, they haven't. Okay, that's fine. So the idea that some of you took part in the workshop I did for Spring Fling last month in October. And in essence, what I did was it was a 4-day workshop where 3 of those 4 days I set a challenge each day. And I talked through, gave examples of what the challenge was going to be that day, and then set the challenge for people to submit their images. And I thought, we could do that with this. I've got this podcast. We've been going this is week 31. 31, for anybody who's been around since the beginning. I'm impressed you're still here. I know some of you have certainly been around since quite early on. So we're, it was beginning of April. So we're 7 months into this. So we have time, we can play. And I thought, well, okay, what I'll do is I'll set a challenge. Let's have a little bit of fun. So for next week, what I want you to do is take a photo related to the idea of rain. Now, part of that is because here in the Northern Hemisphere, and I know there's a couple of Southern Hemisphere people who watch as well, but at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, or Europe and North America at least, it's coming into winter. It rains a lot. In Scotland, it generally rains a lot most of the year, but, particularly noticeable at the moment. And in India at the moment, I think there's the monsoon. Certainly, VG was talking about in southern India. That it's the rainy season at the moment. I think it's dry for about 9 or 10 months and then chucks it down with rain for about 2 or 3 months. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to see your photos. I'd like to see your photos of rain. Now, rather than just sort of throw that at you, what I thought I would do is just talk you through a little bit about ways of taking photos of rain and things to take into consideration. Now, I will say that I came up with this idea only a couple of days ago, and I thought, well, that's fine. I'll rush about and I'll take some photos outside, and it hasn't rained. It's been overcast. There was a brief moment of drizzle, which wasn't really giving me the effect that I wanted to try and capture the rain. And then it's been dry today. So I've actually had to go raid some previous photos. And I will talk you through a couple of things. So the main thing, so what I want to talk you through is that there's several different ways you can go. First of all, there's the idea of taking photo of the rain itself. Now, that's anybody who's tried this, it's extraordinarily difficult to actually get it to show up. I mean, we step into the rain, we can feel it, we know it's raining. We can look out the window and we can see it splattering against the glass. So you can take photos of the droplets on the grass, but actually trying to get photos of the rain falling itself is extraordinarily difficult. It doesn't really tend to show up very well, especially if the light is behind you, again, part of the problem is that there's an ambient all-round soft light if it's just on a dull, cloudy day. You're not getting shadows, you're not getting strong light coming from a particular direction, unless you happen to be one of those sort of lucky moments where it's both sunny and raining at the same time. By and large, the best way to really show up rain is backlight. And some of you have heard me talk about backlight before. And basically what you need is, if the rain is here, you need the light coming from behind. Now, if the light is coming from exactly behind, you won't see it because the light will overpower the rain. But if the light is sort of slightly off to one side, it will start lighting up the rain. Now, the second part of this is that you also need to have a dark patch for the light, for the rain to show up against. Because if it's a light background, the light will hit the rain even from behind, it won't show up. So you've kind of got to have a bit of a dark background as well as a light source from behind. And if you can do that, then you get the rain. Now, really, I mean, I was dragging through my archives trying to find something like this. The only ones I could find, and they're quite poor quality, and you'll kind of see why they're poor quality in a moment. But I took on the back of a camel, in Morocco, in the desert, at night, when there was a storm. I went to Morocco about 4 years ago, and we did a camel ride into the desert, stayed overnight in the desert, and watched the sunrise, and then camel ride back again. Wonderful experience. Getting to the point whereby to get to the place where we were going to get on the camels and the 2 or 3 hour camel ride out to the campsite in the desert. We arrived late. They were hanging on for us, but the sun was just sort of setting, or just set by the time we actually got onto the camels. And it got darker and darker. And as it got darker, off in the distance, there was wee flashes of light. And somebody else in the team thought, oh, that might be lightning. And I thought, nah, it's probably just cars in the distance or something. We're in the desert. It doesn't rain in the desert, does it? We're 3,000 miles away from Scotland. Surely we've escaped rain now. And then there was another flash. And then suddenly there was a point where there was a flash, and in the distance there was a slight rumble. And then there was another flash, and the rumble was really loud. And then suddenly the wind whipped up, and then the rain started, and then flashes of lightning were going off. And for a brief moment, the whole of the desert would be lit up, just for that fraction of a second, and then disappear again. And your brain is taking the time to process what it's just seen. Happening way too quickly to take any photos of. And of course, you're on a camel doing this, doing your absolute best just to even just stay on the camel, you know, and hold on. And there were a couple of times I'm bouncing around on this camel, holding on with one hand, trying to take a photo. And there was a point whereby a jeep came out, and I think that, I can't remember whether they were looking for us or anything, but there were headlights. And so what I did was I took a photo here, and here you can see we've got the guy leading the camels, we've got a couple of people on camels in front, and you've got the headlights. And what you notice then is, as I zoom in, you can now sort of see the rain against, not in the headlights, but where it sort of comes away from the headlights. Less so well there. Let's try the next one. This one's a slightly better one, and this one you can really see it now. So if I zoom in here, you can see these streaks, these lines here, where it's whipping. The rain is really kind of coming in hard. If you look back at this one here, you can see these bright patches. This is where the sand is blowing across the sand, because the wind really kind of got up strong. But the main one that I want to show you was this one. And because there's now where the light disappears, you know, over on the left here, you can't see the rain at all because the light isn't hitting it. But where you've got light hitting it, but you've got darker patches, you can then see the rain more clearly. Once we get into the light, you can't see the rain here because the light's too strong. But where you've got essentially a backlight and a darker background, that's where you can see the rain. And that's the key. So if there's any way you can do that, and nighttime shoots can be quite good. If you've got street lights, if you're in an urban setting and you've got street lights, especially if you've got quite heavy rain, make sure the street lights are behind, and then quite often you will see the rain kind of in the cone of light that comes out from it. And depending on what else is going on, it can be quite atmospheric. And actually, if you can do something like put it on a tripod, set it for something like a half-second exposure, as a car goes past, you can even get the kind of those streaks of light of the tail lights, as well as the rain coming into it. So if you want to get really creative, do that. And bonus points for anybody who decides they want to have a go at doing that. Other things you can do with rain, as well as actually trying to take it directly, is the effects of rain. So, you know, that can be things like, you know, the raindrops on the window, or puddles. And if you can find the puddles, and you can get the reflections off the puddles as well, and create interesting reflections. You can look at flowers, you know, where you've got the droplets on them, and sometimes droplets actually act a bit like a sort of little magnifying glass. So you can see here with this that, okay, the bluebell or harebell is in focus in the front here, and it's just out of focus in the background. But actually, in this drop of water, it's almost acting like a kind of a lens itself, and is starting to sort of show in focus, though upside down, the flowers that are behind it and part of the rest of the garden. So sometimes water droplets can actually contain little mini universes within themselves. Here's one where you've got the droplets on the flower, but you can actually see in one or two, you know, couple of the raindrops just catching a little bit of light coming in there as well. So you can do that with the rain. Another thing you can do is you could look at response to the rain. And now I don't have any photos like this because I suppose, going off a slight tangent, but it's relevant. One of the interesting things with this understanding photography with Kim Ayres is I understand all the principles of photography. You've seen my photography, you know I'm a professional photographer. My speciality, though, is people and portraits and staged narrative shoots and things like the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. Right down my street. That's exactly the kind of photography I love doing. But a lot of the other kind of photography, landscape, wildlife, street, still life, flowers, these are not my speciality. I understand the principles and I can take a reasonable photo, but I'm not the expert at that some will have. So there's a level whereby I don't actually have as many photos of these because I've just not gone out and taken them. I've started taking a lot more since lockdown. So there's an element whereby I'm kind of learning along with you. And another fun part of setting the challenges is that it kind of forces me to go out and try and take some photos too. Like I say, I was kind of unlucky with this one. And it does look like it's essentially set to be dry for the rest of the week, so I don't know that I'll actually have any photos for you for next week. However, if it does actually turn out to rain and I do get a chance, I will put my own. I will join in the challenge as well and stick a photo in next week. But yes, the other thing I wanted to say was the notion of the response to rain. So that, even if you can't really get much of the rain itself into the photo, somebody holding an umbrella is a response to the rain. Somebody pulling their jacket up, pulling their hat down, pulling their coat round them as it's raining. Windscreen wipers, or dancing in it. I mean, again, one of those lovely things is that in Scotland and a lot of Northern Europe and North America, rain is just something to be sighed about and just, got to stick the hat on, got to get... But I've had a number of conversations with VG in India where, because it only rains a couple of months a year, a lot of people, VG is one of them, a lot of people also where she lives get quite ecstatic and excited by the rain. It's also much warmer. I mean, you go and leap out into the rain in here and you will get cold. But in that part of India, VG will run out into the street or go up on the roof or, just absolutely enjoy getting soaked. So if you can take photos of people doing that, even more fun, So you can take photos of the rain, you can take photos of the effects of the rain, or you can take photos of the response to the rain. All these are possibilities, all these come under the category rain. So this is the challenge now. And what I will do probably tomorrow is I'll set up the event page for next week, and I'll explain again. I'll maybe even crop out this bit of the video and just sort of put it in to remind people what we're talking about. And then you can either post your photos on the event page or post your photos in the Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres Facebook group and put them in. I'll set a deadline for the weekend. Try and get them in by Sunday. If you get, if you're struggling, you get them in by Monday, that's okay. I suppose a bit depends on the response. If only 2 of you bother responding, well, as long as I get them by Tuesday, I'll have something. But I'm hoping that more of you will. I hope, everybody watching will want to give it a go. And what I would like to do is, if I end up with anything between 10, 20 responses or more, I will dedicate next week's program we'll go through the photos, we'll have some fun, we'll see if we can inspire each other. We'll look at what other people are doing, their approach on it. I'll give feedback and comments on the photos, suggestions of how I think you might have done them differently if needed, and we'll have some fun with it. Okay, so that's next week. Photographs of rain. Please join in, and you can take. If you say I haven't got a fancy camera, it doesn't matter. Use your phone, use your tablet. Like I say, even take photos of a puddle on the patio or patterns on the window. You see if you can take some of your patterns on the window with your iPad or your phone. I'm sure most of you could probably do something. Join in is fun, honestly. Okay, so that's what I wanted to talk about with that. That's setting up that. So what else? Oh, a couple of comments. Stacey says it poured for days here and now it's sunny. Right, okay. And VG said it's dry and sunny for the past 3 days. Oh, VG, you missed the rain. Oh dear. And Pat says Gene Kelly's mesmerising singing in the rain dance. The rain was milk, honestly. I'm not sure about it. I've heard that. I've heard people say that in order to make the rain show up in the movie Singing in the Rain, that they did put milk in it because of this exact problem. But then I've heard somebody else debunk that myth and say, no, they didn't. And it's all about the lighting. And there is a thing with, go and look up on YouTube, Dancing in the Rain with Gene Kelly. There, you will find the snippet somewhere, and it is so beautiful to watch. And and for those who really want a bit of fun as well, look up Morecambe and Wise Dancing in the Rain, where they did their own little sketch on it, which is just pure genius. But with the rain, a lot of the way they did do it, milk or not, is backlight. They've got it's all done in a studio with massive amounts of water and a big sound set, but they lit it from behind so that the light is showing the rain up against every dark bit. There's quite a lot of strong shadows in Dancing in the Rain in that sequence. Darker bits of building, he's wearing a darker suit, and it's precisely so that where the light hits the rain, you will see it a bit more. Right, okay, so we'll now move on to the critique section, the feedback section. Two photos have been submitted for it this week. So, this is the chance for you to stick your photos in, get some feedback, get an idea of how you might improve a particular, rather than kind of just a general, what do I do with photography? What could I have done with this picture? Or to ask me questions. It doesn't just have to be a particular photo. If there's a particular technique you're interested in, or there's a particular difficulty you have, or you keep hearing people talk about and they use this term of jargon and you've got no idea what they're talking about, or you've kind of Googled it but it still doesn't really make sense, leave me a question. So Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, the Facebook group, go to it and put in your photos, put in your questions, and I'll deal with them in the following podcast. And just a little reminder, if you're finding any of this useful, interesting, and you'd like to continue to support these podcasts, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is the place where you can contribute. Right, so two that I've got today. I'll talk VG first. I know VG's watching live from India, and because the clocks have gone back here in the UK, it's even later in India, so it's something like 5.5 hours ahead, so you're coming up to something like about 2 o'clock in the morning, which is serious dedication, VG, and you really ought to be getting some sleep and watching this on the repeat, but I greatly appreciate your commitment. So I'll do VG's photo first, I think. So what happened was VG sent in, let me see if I can just drag that one over. And the comment was, I shot this at our office backyard, unedited. Fighting spirit of a brand new plant shooting out of the seed. There are so many dried up seeds and there's so much distraction. Is there a way to blur the background, retaining the earthy colour? I remember long back you talked about masking. I tried locating to do that and post it, but I was running short of time. Okay. So, what we've got here is, you can see VG's unedited, she's taken the photo, it's got the shoot coming up out of the grass, you can see the seed pods, not coming out of the grass, coming up out of the earth, the dried earth, and the seed pods lying around in the background. Now, it is focused on the tip here, so if we zoom in, we're kind of sharper on the tip here, and it is a little bit blurred in the background, but not as blurred as she would like. Now, there's a couple of other things. It's focused dead smack bang in the centre, so we will probably, and I'm sure if VG had time she would have cropped it, but generally speaking, the way to crop something like this, your first starting point is pretty much rule of thirds. And the rule of thirds being that what you want is the main focus, the main point of your photo is a third of the way into the picture and a third of the way up or down. So if I click on this, you start to see this, I've got like this little grid here, like a little noughts and crosses or tic-tac-toe grid. So if I pull this across and I create this in the corner and crop, that's maybe just a bit too far across, that's kind of create something like that, I think. And then that way we've got the stalk coming out of like a diagonal to the corner, and then we've got this off center, and that off center always creates a little bit more tension and dynamism than if you've got it sitting in the middle. But the next bit is that the bit that VG wanted to know was how you blur out the background a little bit more. Now, I know, talking specifically about Photoshop, and I know VG recently got a license for the monthly, I think you pay the monthly subscription. That's the word I was trying to find. So subscription for Photoshop. So I'm going to talk a little bit just briefly about this, where what you do is you section off an area. So I'm going to duplicate the layer first of all. Now, on a PC, you hold down well, the problem is that there's about 6 different ways to do everything in Photoshop. So by and large, you tend to find the way that works for you. To duplicate a layer, you can just go up to Layer and then down Duplicate Layer. And then it says Duplicate Layer. OK, now I have a copy layer. Alternatively, if you like shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts, Control and J also duplicates the layer, or I think on an Apple Mac it's Command and J. Either way, I've now got a second layer, a duplicate of it. Now what I want to do then is I'm going to blur it. So I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and then I can move this up a little bit of blur or a lot of blur. And basically I can sort of fiddle around with that until I get the amount that I want. Maybe I don't want it so unrecognizable, but I want sort of somewhere where it's more blurred than it was. So let's go with, for the sake of something about 50 or something like that. So it's quite a lot of blur actually, but anyway. Now, I'll just undo that for a moment and come back here. Now, what I need to do is I want to have this original bit that isn't blurred. So if I go back to this one, and then I create a mask. Now, basically, again, there's a number of different ways you can do it. You can go to Layer and then Layer Mask. Or down on just under here, there's a little kind of, it's like a square or rectangle with a circle on it, which says Add Layer Mask. And if I click on that, you might see over on the right that I've got a white block on it. Now, anything that's white on here is keeping it. But if I paint black on it, then the layer underneath it starts to show up. So if I mean, I could take that quite small and I could just do and you can see, and that's almost like where you sort of run your finger over a misty window. And you can then, condensation on the window, and then you run your finger through it, and now you can see through it. So in essence, what you do then is you undo the mask on this. So a very loose thing, I can paint it. So I paint over something like that. Now, that's a very quick way of doing it. The problem we find is that as we come in close, we find that some of the background has sort of still come in, and I've not been very good with it. So another option, if I go back to here, is to select an area. And we've got a couple of options with that as well. We could select via colour, because that's the only bit of green. If I go to Select Colour Range, and I click on the green, you can now see it's pretty much just grab that area, and I can sort of do less or more of. If I take it too loose, then all the background starts to show up too. So if I then do that, you can see that it's just selected, although it's only selected the lighter part of the green. So what I might, again, so if I select color range, as well as selecting that, I need to hold down the Shift button, and then I can select the darker green as well. So that's one way of doing it. Alternatively, there's an option here, the quick selection tool, and if I drag this over here, it kind of looks out for edges, and I just kind of move it over, something like that, and if I hold down the Alt button, I can kind of go in back around the opposite. Now that's selected that area for me, so now if I go back to here, actually, well, I'll tell you what, yeah. Now I can, I'll tell you what, to stop, I'll do that again. I'll get rid of, first of all, I'll get rid of this selection. So paint that white. Right, so we're back to the blurred area. So now what I will do is I'll go back here, I will do that quick selection, and it's finding the edges here for me so that I don't have to worry too much about the bits that I can't. Like I say, if I hold down the Alt key, I can go back where I've kind of gone too far out. So now I've done that, if I go back to here, that area is selected off, and if I take the paintbrush and turn it black, it only lights up that area. So you can now see that bit's just popping through. Now it does look slightly false, especially around the edges. So what you can do is if you turn the opacity down and just do a sort of little light, kind of come around the edges a little bit, just sort of softens, makes it blend in a little bit more. But in essence, that's what you're playing around with. So you kind of blur the whole thing a bit more, but then just cut out the little bit that you didn't want blurred. So I hope that makes sense, VG. And then of course, once you've got that, now again, what I can do, if I Control A, select all, copy, and then paste the image on there, and then at that point, you know, you might want to go into editing it a bit more, bring it auto, make it a little bit brighter, give it, not the curve, that's the wrong one. I'll go to optics, give a little bit of a vignette, go back to basic, and then add in a little bit more texture, a little bit more clarity, something like that. So what we've gone is we've gone from that to that. And your seed stands out a little bit more. Maybe the background's too bright now actually, but anyway, I won't bother changing it just, but you can get a sense of how that works. So I hope that helps, VG. Right, okay. Quick flip back. So VG says it's 2. Yes, okay, so it's 2 o'clock in the morning now for VG. Maggie says the smooth green is beautiful. VG says I cropped and posted that as well. Okay, yeah, I think you put that in quite late, so I've not actually had a chance to look at it. Margaret Uphill says the, which is a bit strange. Now, I don't recognise the name Margaret Uphill, so this is maybe the first time you've come here, Margaret. Welcome. Or it might be that you were trying to write on a different video entirely and made a mistake on this one. But if you are watching, do come back and complete the sentence. That would be lovely. Okay, VG said, oh, thanks a lot, Kim. I'm loving Photoshop. We'll be trying to edit this. Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, really play. Go in and play. Right, okay, so the next picture I'm going to talk about then is Eamon. So Eamon emailed me this picture of a storm down at the sea. And what we have here is we've got, you know, obviously a very windy day, got the waves crashing over the jetty or the pier, and it's all very dramatic. Now, I'm aware that my picture down in the bottom bottom left corner of the screen is kind of blocking part of the picture. So I do want to show you actually just the fact that when you look at the whole picture, the first thing that I become aware of is really just this wall, this concrete wall, which I tend to feel is just a bit too dominant. Actually, before I get to that bit, what I should say is I'm envious, right? I don't live quite on the coast, about 10 miles drive, and there isn't a place where there's like a nice kind of place where storms happen. The best place for that is sort of out towards Port William and what have you, Port Patrick, which is about 60 miles from here, over on the coast of the Irish Sea. And there you do get some, with the storms kind of come in off the Irish Sea, and you can get the really big breakers hitting the sea wall, and it can be very dramatic. and I would love to go and take photos like that. I've never had the opportunity, so there's part of me quite envious. And one day, I want to try and take one of those photos where you see them at the lighthouse. The lighthouse is being hit by one of these tremendous waves. So I can absolutely understand why you've taken the photo. The other really interesting thing about this is that whilst it's stormy, the sun is out as well. And what that's doing is, as well as creating some interesting patterns on the foam and the top of the waves here, you're getting a backlight, a partial backlight. You can see where the light is coming in from the side, and it's like, it's very bright here. A bit too far in for that. But we're also getting depth of the splashes here as well. There's real texture in amongst that, which is a lot of fun. And to be honest, I think what it makes me really feel I want to do is I'd want to move round a bit. I want to be the other side of this pier, if at all possible, if it runs at 90 degrees to it. It's to not be standing looking this side, but to be standing the other side of the pier looking back. Because then I think what would happen is you would have the sun more behind it, and you would really have a much more dramatic backlight effect. So when you took the photo and the waves are hitting, the sun will be coming through the waves from behind, and guaranteed that would just give you some phenomenal effects. So if you, again, I keep going on about it, backlight as the photographer's secret weapon. Master backlight. Always look, master it, just start looking for it. Look for opportunities where you can take a photo where the light is behind the subject. Not so that the light is glaring directly into your camera. Well, you can do that, but it's a different effect. But most of the time you want the light sort of maybe 45 degrees or 30 degrees just outside the edge of the image, but behind the subject, so that the light is coming through it. And when you've got something like water, just like we were talking about the rain shows up best when the light's coming from behind. If you can do that with crashing waves, you can get some really beautiful effects. So that's really where I would come in with the first thing. I think the next thing with this is, like I say, the part of the problem for me here, I think, is that the concrete pier is kind of too big and dominant. And whereas really the action is in the wave. So immediately what I would do is I would crop this narrower, sort of maybe pull that down, pull this up from the bottom. So I still want to keep some of these bits of waves in at the bottom, but I just don't want so much in the way of, maybe that's taken a bit too much off the top. Let's just come back, do that to the bottom again, and maybe pull this in a little bit from the left as well. Now again, this post that we've got here would have been quite nice had there been a post sort of a little bit further in, but again, in order to get that kind of where we would want it, you would have to have moved round a little bit more. But now I think we've got a sort of little bit more, slightly better balance with it. And then I think with editing, you really want to try and bring out the texture of those waves a bit more. So I'm going to do Control J, duplicate that layer, and I'm going to go into Camera Raw again to show you kind of what you could be doing. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I will add a little bit of a vignette, because it just helps bring our attention. But I won't quite fully overdo it, just but bringing it, because it brings our attention back more into the middle of the photo. And then what I want to do is I want to take the texture. Well, I'll take the highlight. I will bring the highlights down a little bit, because if I bring them down, we get a little bit more texture into here. Boost the shadows up a little bit from here, and then I'm going to play with the texture button and the clarity button, and then that's going to give the whole lot an awful. Maybe bring a bit more out the shadows because it's making the shadows a bit too dark. So the texture and the clarity here, and in fact actually with that I can probably take that vignette down a little bit more as well, because it's adding texture to the outside of the screen. So now you can see we've gone from that to that. And, so the sky is more textured, the sea is more textured, and even this concrete bit here in front is more textured. I think that kind of sort of makes it a little bit more interesting. You could maybe play with color shifts as well. I mean, I've got my little favorite go-to orange and blue, which is too strong with that, but I just kind of bring that up a little bit, kind of brings in a little bit more warmth into the, it kind of makes it look like the sun's a little bit lower, like that, a little bit more blue into the sky as well. In fact, if I go back to that one, let's just try a little color shift up here. What happens if I move it? Can make it bluer, can make it yellower, but I'm just going to nudge the blue down a little bit, and then up that a little bit more. Yeah, it's maybe just a touch too much, so I'll just pull that down, pull that back a little bit, something like that. And so what we've done is we've gone from that to that. In fact, actually what we've done is we've gone from that to that. And I think that's really kind of giving us a lot more. I mean, if we go back to the original here, so this wall here is too dominant, and we're losing the real power of this photo is in this wave, and we want to make more of that, but we also want to bring out that texture in it. And if we do this, I think we've got more of the texture, we've got more of the dominance of the wave and less of the dominance of the pier itself. There's enough of the pier so that you know what the wave is hitting, but it's no longer kind of distracting us from the actual impact of the wave. And then if you could really, and of course you can't do it now, but if you're in that situation ever again, I would love to know what it's like if you just moved round a bit to your left and had taken it from the other side of the pier looking back, because I think then the sunlight coming through the waves would have created something quite spectacular. So I hope that helps, Eamon. What have we got here? Oh, Maggie says lovely marks on the walls. Yeah, you can certainly get away. You know, you could. That's another thing you could do is you could zoom in on the texture of the walls there, the rust on the concrete. That's for sure. Katazina, you still haven't told me yet how you pronounce it. I'm going to keep embarrassing myself. I edit my pictures in Lightroom only. I will next time in Photoshop. Transformation looks amazing. If you've got Photoshop, get in there and play with it. Lightroom's fun, but you know there's other things you can do with Photoshop as well. Stacey says my drive to Atlantic City, or even better, up to Massachusetts, which is an 8-hour drive. Yeah, okay, fine, you win. It's not as bad as a 10-minute drive or a 1-hour drive to go out to Port Patrick. Yeah, you're a completely different sense of scale. I mean, I remember my time when I spent time in Canada and North America in general, is the fact that people talk about distance not in miles or kilometers, but in time. I mean, you ask anybody how far something is from around here, and it's 5 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles, 100 miles, 300 miles, 500 miles. You cannot be more than 800 miles from one end of the country to the other. But in North America, it's, yeah, it's about an hour's drive. It's 10 hours drive. It's 3 days drive. The idea that something could be 3 days drive away and still not be the other side of the country. Yeah, different mindset completely than we have here in the UK. Yeah, so Stacey says Massachusetts is a great area to see storms. At the other end is North or South Carolina during hurricane season. Well, yeah, I can imagine that would be astonishing, but I can also imagine it would be quite terrifying to be there in the middle of a hurricane. Oh, Viji says I need to walk exactly 3 minutes for the beach. Fiji, you're 3 minutes away from the beach. I want to see more beach photos from you. Now, I know you complain about the fact that it's always covered in people, but make a feature of it. People on the beach. And get people on the beach in the rain. There we go. Task for next week, if it rains again before next week. Right, okay. That's pretty much us, I think. So, main thing to remember now is the challenge for next week. I want to see your rain pictures. I'm not going to do talk about a photo do the critique section. Next week is going to be the challenge. And if it works, I'll make a regular feature out of it, maybe do a monthly challenge or something like that, and we can all have some fun. The idea is with this, it's an important part of understanding photography with Kim Ayres, is it's not just me talking to you. I like it when you talk back. I like it when you talk to each other. We're building a community. This is the idea really, is that we're all helping each other out. It's not just me standing up lecturing. I want to grow this. I want to develop this. I've got ideas in the pipeline of where this can go further. And it's based around the idea of us enjoying this together. We're a part of this. Everybody who tunes into this each week, everybody who takes the time to comment, we all have a love for photography. And we all want to improve our photography. And it doesn't matter what level you're at. It doesn't matter whether you're just starting out. It doesn't matter whether you've never really given it much thought, but you have access to a phone or a tablet. Or if you've been doing this for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. We have a love for photography, and it's a never ending. Nobody has mastered every single aspect of photography there is. There's bits where some of us are more advanced in some areas, some in other areas. Some of us get insights. Doesn't matter how experienced you are, you can always learn. I've learned loads over the last 7 months. You learn a lot by teaching, but these little insights that, every time somebody sort of asks me to critique that picture, I've got to look at a fresh picture that I didn't take, and I learn from doing that, and it's wonderful. I really enjoy that. So we're all learning from this. So take your photos, contribute. And it doesn't matter if you don't think that they're up to scratch. If it's the best photo you could create under the circumstances, submit the photo. Tell me a bit about the photo as well. Don't just put it in. Just tell me a little bit about what it is that attracted you to that, why you took that photo. Any photo you take and you put up, there's a reason you took that photo in the first place. And that's something I'm trying to really get across in, you'll heard me say this in the critique section plenty of times. If you've taken a photo, there's a reason you took that photo. So something drew you to it. And if you can understand what it is that drew you to it, whether it was the texture, the pattern, the mood, the feel, the taste, the way it sort of, a kind of tingly feeling that just kind of, I've got to, like almost like an itch. There's something grabbing you when you thought, I'm going to take a photo of that rather than not, or rather than something else. And so tell me what it is. When you submit the photo, tell me what it is that drew you to taking that photo. And then that will also help me if you tell me, well, what I really loved was the way the light was reflecting, or what I was trying to do was capture the colour, but somehow it didn't work, or whatever it is, let me know. And then hopefully I can give you some insights to help you move your photography forward next week. So please submit your images, and next week we'll have a lot of fun looking through the images, discussing them. Okay, that's it. Again, if you found this useful, please consider buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres. And Cantazania has said the short form of my name is Cassia, if that makes it easier for you. Cassia. Thank you, Cassia. I will try and remember that, and I will try and keep you, try and remember that for next time. Thank you very much for coming along and tuning in, and thank you for all of you. And Maggie says, love it. It's all about sharing. VG, good night, everyone. Take care. Worst case, might catch the water from the bathroom shower. Well, yes, that would be inventive too. Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you very much. Look forward to your submissions. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care. Now, I'm just going to try something here where I flip across the back.